Hello, everybody. I am Adam Lane Smith. Today, I'm here to tell you why everything you've ever been taught about employee loyalty is completely wrong. It is not about ping pong tables. It is not about unlimited PTO. And it's also not about even competitive pay. The companies that have the highest retention rates have actually figured out something so much simpler. Now, I'm a specialist in the field of applied attachment science, which is really just the understanding of how humans bond and build committed relationships with each other, okay? And for many, many years, I watched supposedly loyal teams collapse under pressure. I watched executives swear that their people were all in it for the long run, only for those same people to very quickly update their profiles the moment that things got hard. Now, at the beginning of my career, like many people, I thought this was something that we call professional betrayal. I thought that maybe it was a flaw in the hiring process, maybe it was a generational issue, an economic factor. But then I discovered something that changed everything I had ever understood about loyalty. And it was this. In many cases, what often looks like betrayal is actually a consequence of biology. It's the brain's bonding system failing in ways that management often misunderstands. So I need to ask you a question right now that might seem a little odd. Is it possible for rewards to cause betrayals? I'll give you an example right now. I have one CEO I've been working with for a while. He previously gave his top performer a 2.5 times raise. Now, that employee had pushed hard for this for 6 months, but just 2 months after getting that raise, the employee left the company, and the CEO was shocked. There's something they just don't tell you about building teams, and it's this. Most leaders honestly believe that loyalty is built through rewards, through recognition, and through growth opportunities. We're told to financially invest in our people, right? We're told to promote the high achievers and give bonuses as incentives. And that sounds right, doesn't it, on the surface? But my experience tells me the opposite. The higher the tangible reward, the lower and weaker the psychological bond to the rest of the team, if that brain has not been conditioned to link bonding with winning. Now, I'm going to say that again, because it's a strange concept, but it's very important. You can accidentally reward your best employee right out of their loyalty to you if they don't connect the reward to the relationship. So that promotion that you just gave your high achiever may have actually made them less loyal to you because the area of the brain for rewards lit up and not relationships. The harsh truth is this. Most of what we teach in business school actually trains the brain to see leadership as a source of rewards and not as an ally. And when you train the brain to focus on rewards, not relationships, on a long enough time spectrum, you will eventually become a threat. I'll explain what I mean here in a moment. But if you are giving people dopamine hits again and again, this is our problem. Okay? But there is an exact equation. There's a neurochemical formula that shows you exactly what's happening in here. And once you see it, you will never lead the same way ever again. Now, for this next part, I need those of you who are in leadership in any capacity, whether it's a company or any other kind of leadership. I want you to think about the people under you, the team, and not your org chart, specifically the people who are in the seats, the people you rely on every single day. And I want you to answer the following questions very carefully. First, are they actually all in? Are they really bought in? Or are they just showing up and hitting key performance indicators? On the inside, are they emotionally burned out and just aiming for that next reward? And you know what I mean. On paper, they look great, right? They show up on time, they hit their numbers. But inside, that fire, that spark, the initiative that they used to have, it's gone. And you can feel it, can't you? Or how about this? Are your best people bringing you problems before or after they blow up into fires? If it's after, here's what's happening. Their brain has learned that connection in your organization is less valuable than performance. Their brain is running on dopamine alone. It's chasing hits instead of all the bonding chemicals that it would build real loyalty. Listen, let me tell you a secret. If your people are not bringing you problems, that is not a green flag. That means their nervous system is telling their brain, don't risk being wrong. Now, if any of that sounds familiar, I'm going to show you what's happening in your organization. And to do that, I have to show you something I call the cortisol ladder. I want you to imagine that you are climbing a very tall ladder. Here's the problem. The higher you go, the narrower it gets, the darker it gets, the more unsteady under your feet. And the big one, the further away you feel from everyone else around you. I'll give you another example. Recently, in the last few weeks, I started working with a young prodigy who was previously flying through the ranks in his company. He's young, 32 years old. We'll call him James for confidentiality, right? Now, James, on the inside, was burned out. And this is why, just 2 weeks after getting his biggest promotion ever to vice president, he had a mental breakdown and quit with a one-line email. His company was shocked. How could this have happened? Wasn't he talented, and wasn't he being rewarded? But his nervous system was not conditioned to handle the stress alone, and he had never built the connections in his company that would help him get help and ask for it. This is why we can have A-listers in every single seat in a company and still fail. Because as they climb that stress ladder right there, eventually the stress gets so big that leaving doesn't feel like a loss to them. Eventually leaving the company feels like relief. This is what we do to people when we use performance reward systems alone. As people climb the ranks in your organization or your group or whatever it may be, their stress increases exponentially. Expectations go up, politicking intensifies, and trust drops. Because the biomechanical systems for climbing this ladder activate survival chemistry, not bonding chemistry. And we make this so much worse because we really believe we are helping people when we throw more rewards at them. More money, bigger titles, corner office. Here's what we're missing. The brain is not conditioned to bond through rewards. We're feeding the wrong system. What most leaders don't understand is this. You're giving them sugar rushes over and over and over. And dopamine alone, these hits, does not produce loyalty. It creates craving and dependency. So every great job email, every bonus, dopamine rushes, hits. And like any addiction, the bigger the hit, the bigger the next one has to be to achieve the same level of satisfaction. At some point, you cannot keep delivering. In fact, at some point, you have to threaten to take away their hits if they don't perform. And this is where you become a threat. This right here is exactly why, at some point, someone else calls them with an offer for a bigger or a safer hit, and that's where we get professional betrayal. Now remember, I promised you an equation to fix this, right? I'll get to that in just a moment, but I want to make this distinction right here. Rewards do work. For those of you who are listening and saying, Adam, I love bonuses, and my promotions, they're great. Rewards do work, but only when they're layered on top of an existing relationship with a human being, something that we in attachment science call a bond. In very simple terms, a bond is a psychological and neurological connection to another human being that makes your brain say, you are a member of my tribe. It makes people matter to you. It's what makes their leaving feel like loss. Without bonds, rewards feel transactional. But with bonds, rewards reinforce connection and commitment and build real biological loyalty. Now, the good news is that every human being has an internal mechanism for building bonds. And once you understand it, we can change all of this. Now, bonding comes down to, this is simplification, but in many systems, 6 key chemicals. And that breaks down into 3 core areas your brain is constantly tracking. We're going to go through these very quickly together. First is bonding chemicals. This is oxytocin and vasopressin. These are bonding hormones. When these are flowing, the brain says, you're a person I want to be around. You are my person. We are good together. Motivation chemicals, dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine, short-term drive, serotonin, long-term fulfillment. It's the brain saying, you make me feel excited and fulfilled. And regulation. This is GABA and cortisol. GABA rises when people care. It's a stress hormone. GABA balances it and prevents that care from overwhelming you. This is your brain saying, I'm all in, and you make it safe to be all in. Bonding, motivation, and regulation. When these 3 systems are in proper balance, when leaders are balancing these systems, you build teams that go way beyond perks and pressure. Now, unfortunately, most organizations are only equipped to trigger one of these, motivation, and only half of that. See this chart right here? Now watch this. That's most companies. Dopamine. Short-term drive through dopamine hits alone. But dopamine on its own as a motivator only creates craving and dependency, not loyalty. And this is what all those organizations are missing. When you don't have those 6 chemicals balanced correctly in those systems, you don't build real relationships. And attachment science shows us that you can't replace bonding with motivation. And you can't reward someone out of feeling stressed. So we promised that equation. Here it is, the secure loyalty equation. It has 3 pieces that you keep in balance with leadership. Very simple. Attraction. This is dopamine and oxytocin. Oxytocin makes you feel connected, safe, bonded. It's a sense of us together. Okay? Now, when oxytocin is flowing, it triggers the release of GABA, which suppresses cortisol. Dopamine comes along, and it's the excitement of being with somebody that you like. So the attraction piece for an organization says, it is good that I'm in this company, and I like to be here. This is a part of a company I want to be in. That plus commitment, which is vasopressin and serotonin. Now, vasopressin, the hormone, releases when we overcome challenges together as a team. It's a signal that says, you were there for me. We win together. And serotonin is a chemical that gives deep purpose, satisfaction, contentment, and fulfillment. This right here is your brain saying, I am fulfilled, and it is good that I'm here. Now, all of that is divided and balanced by care, which is cortisol balanced against GABA. Now, here's what most people get wrong. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is not innately bad. And the goal of good leadership is not reducing stress to 0. Why? Because cortisol rises when people care deeply about the mission, about outcomes, and about their teammates. It's a signal that says, I'm all in. But the chemical formula here, what this does is create a loop where stress needs to lead to connection instead of stress leading to short-term dopamine hits and pleasure. That's the change. Now, the teams that achieve absolutely impossible things that you look at and say, why can't that be my team? Or how would I do that? The startup that ships at 2 a.m., okay, the ER team that saves lives under pressure, the Navy SEAL squad that achieves their mission in the nick of time, they all have incredibly high stress, but they also have very deep bonds. The caring fuels them instead of destroying them. And that's the mechanism here of proper leadership. It's not reducing stress to 0, it's controlled cortisol. That's balancing the bottom of the equation, the care versus the top, the attraction and the commitment. That balance actually is the purpose of leadership. When the leadership is properly balancing that, what happens instead, right, is teams that work together and build loyalty. When you do that, that's how you achieve those things. Now, this is my favorite part. When everybody together in the organization is implementing this practice as a team, instead of individuals just one-off trying to build those chemicals in isolation, we don't just get a plus between attraction and commitment, we achieve multiplication. The reason for this is that oxytocin spreads as team members support each other. Vasopressin also spreads as team members overcome challenges together. One person's bonding activates another back and forth, and eventually, very quickly, you have a team creating 30 to 40% more productivity, not because they're working harder, but because they're bonded deeper. The caring is driving them. Now, we achieved this, we built this inside my own company. Using this methodology, my sales team 3 times their revenue in 1 year because they were working together so intensely. They're now the easiest team to manage, by the way. Right? Most efficient problem solvers, the least conflict. Imagine what could happen if you implemented this methodology with your team. Imagine your team walking into any crisis and being excited because they know they're not going to end up burned out. They're going to be bonded and stronger. Imagine your team bringing you problems early, not because they have to, but because they trust that you'll work on it together. Imagine recruiters calling your company on the phone and your people and saying, I will give you a 30% raise, and your people saying, no, thank you. Not because of the money, but because leaving would actually feel like loss. And if you can imagine that, let me ask you this. Would you, as a leader, trade dependency-based systems for one that builds real, authentic human connection? Would you build teams that prioritize bonding in addition to performance, where loyalty is multiplied and not depleted? Would you become a leader that the best talent seeks out, not because you pay the most, but because your team's genuine loyalty shines through? And if you've answered yes, excellent, because you're ready. And I want to say this to all the leaders out here. If you've been using dependency-based systems up until now, if you've been starving the bonding mechanisms and feeding dependency and craving, you are not a bad leader. You've been doing what everybody taught you to do. You didn't know the equation. No one showed it to you. But now you have it. Now there's a choice. Remember the formula. Real biologically enhanced loyalty. We call it bioloyalty. Attraction plus commitment, balanced by care, multiplied across your entire organization. Imagine if this was your team. Here's 3 ways that you can start implementing this starting today. First, build attraction through shared identity. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, releases in the absence of stress. So create places where stress is not invited. Shared meals, meetings without deadlines and agendas, but where you're being real human beings together. Support each other. Number 2, build commitment through shared challenges. Vasopressin releases when we overcome challenges together. So tackle problems collaboratively. When they bring a problem, the first words out of your mouth should be, here's how we're going to solve this together. And third, build the multiplier effect. That means modeling the equation to your team, working with them and building bonding, but also building bonding systems where it's not just vertical bonding in your company, but peer-to-peer. When you see your team reinforcing and supporting each other, encourage that. Your team is capable of profound loyalty, the kind that doesn't have to be bought, the kind that shows up when things get hard. In fact, especially when things get hard. The question is not whether they're capable, it's whether you are ready to trade dependency for real loyalty. Remember that CEO who gave his star performer a 2.5 times raise? I saw him again last month, and his new approach, collaborative problem solving, shared meals, celebrating wins. His people don't leave anymore, not because of money, but because leaving would feel like loss. The teams who achieve the most are not working harder, they're bonded deeper. And starting today, your team can be one of them. Thank you very much.